Hey, Alex Schumann here with Taft School of History, and today, because I'm a history buff, we're going to be talking about World War II.
Hi, Alexander back again, and I'm going to talk about Operation Torch. In 1942, to weaken Hitler, Churchill convinced Roosevelt to invade Casablanca in Morocco. This battle made sense because the Allies needed another victory. This plan was successful, and under General George Patton, American forces overcame French resistance. Now, the Casablanca Conference. In 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt met with Winston Churchill in Casablanca, French Morocco, to discuss war plans. There, they agreed to continue the pursuit of military operations in Sicily, to continue the heavy bombing offensive against Germany, and to establish a staff in London to organize a French invasion. Those involved in the conference pledged an unconditional surrender, a concept that they defined as the total elimination of German and Japanese war power.
Joseph Cipolli here. I just had the best cup of Roman tea. Speaking of, today I'm going to talk to you about the Allied invasion of Italy, which happened on September 23rd, 1943. The Allied amphibious landing on the beaches of Italy, led by British General Sir Harold Alexander, during the early stages of the Italy campaign featured three major operations. The main plan, Operation Avalanche, planned to land at Salerno, and two supporting operations, Operation Baytown and Operation Slapstick, landed on either sides of Salerno. Following the Allied win in North Africa, Winston Churchill, the leader of the United Kingdom, wanted to attack the Axis from the soft underbelly because he believed it would provide the Allies with a foothold in the Axis territory. The Soviet Union fully supported their plan to invade Italy because it would create a separate Western front on Germany, forcing the Nazis to spread their forces across two separate fronts. Later, the Soviets met with Winston Churchill and FDR in a meeting called the Tehran Conference on November 28th, which lasted for 3 days until December 21st, 1943. It was a strategy meeting held in Tehran, Iran. The main outcome was that the Allies decided to open a second front fully by invading Nazi Germany from France. The Soviet Union would also launch an offensive front on the eastern side of Germany, spreading the Nazis' forces across two separate fronts.
Oh hey, Michael Corbell here, and I'm going to go talk to you today about D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge. On June 6, 1944, it was a pivotal point for the Allied forces in the war. D-Day is known as the beginning of the end for the German army. It was a major offensive for the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. They used over 150,000 soldiers to attack 50 miles of beach in Normandy, located in northern France. Normandy was a German stronghold and is known for its heavy artillery, and when the Allied forces defeated the Germans by August of 1944, the Nazi forces were on their heels, and it marked the turning point of the war. The Battle of the Bulge is known as the bloodiest battle of World War II. The German counter-offensive began on December 16, 1944, in a desperate blitzkrieg sent by Hitler. He sent three German armies that amounted to 250,000 soldiers into the Ardennes Mountains in northwestern Europe. The goal was to separate the Allied forces and stop the advance into Germany. During the battle, a heavy snowstorm ensued, immobilizing both armies, and veteran Rocky Blunt said, "During the Bulge, command broke down, supplies broke down, and morale broke down. Communications broke down, and everything broke down. It was every man for himself." In these desperate times, General Patton boosted the morale on the fighting front by fighting on the front. He outmaneuvered the German forces, leading to the most important victory of the war on January 25th, 1945.
Oh hey, Jeremiah Case here, and I'm here to talk to you guys about the Yalta Conference, also known as the Crimean Conference. It was a meeting in southern Ukraine between the three world leaders of the Allied nations, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and FDR of the United States. The main purpose of this meeting was to discuss Europe's post-war reorganization and also to discuss how the nations destroyed by Germany were to be reestablished. The Soviet Union in this time wanted a sphere of influence and expand the communist influence. The United States wants, during this time period, Russia's help as they were about to invade Japan, and the atomic bomb had not been built or detonated yet. And then Great Britain, on the opposite standpoint of Russia, did not want Russia to expand its influence. And then what was accomplished? It was thought that this was the cause of the Cold War. Germany was broken up into 4 different regions: the Soviets, the United States, Great Britain, and France. And then also the United Nations was made. It was kind of a reflection of the League of Nations, which failed. But they also made a secret deal between Russia and the United States that both countries would have the utmost power in the UN through the ability to veto almost any bill. And then another deal was made that free democratic elections would be made in the East, which was a lie made by Stalin.
Tom Caesar's here talking about the Battle of Berlin and the Holocaust. The Battle of Berlin was the last major battle of World War II. The battle began on April 16, 1945 and lasted until May 2, 1945. It was with the German and the Soviet army. The Soviets vastly outnumbered the Germans. It's 2,500,000 compared to 1 million soldiers. On April 16th, the Soviets attacked. On the 20th, they bombed Berlin and went into the streets, and 10 days later, Hitler finally admitted defeat and surrendered by committing suicide along with his wife. The Berlin blockade was the most important and dramatic confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union in the formative period of the Cold War. The blockade of Berlin, which was the blocking of Berlin and the resulting airlift. The problem in Berlin arose from the wartime agreements among the Allies for the post-war administration of Germany. Politically, the blockade and airlift brought unintended and unwelcome results for the Soviet Union, rather than forcing a humiliating retreat on the Western powers. The blockade showed the West to be a solid ally of all the Berliners, willing to pay any price to save the people from either Soviet domination or war. By February 1949, it had become clear that the Western powers could sustain the airlift indefinitely, and the blockade was driving the Germans into the arms of the West. It was a heavy burden for the U.S. and British taxpayers, approximately $200 million, and the Berliners had to make do with very short rations. Moreover, accidental deaths did occur. 24 planes crashed, and 76 people lost their lives. Although additional Berlin crises would occur, including the building of Berlin Wall in 1961, the Berlin blockade and the airlift response had been a clear turning point in the history of the post-World War II Europe. War had been avoided, the Soviet Union was forced to back down, and West Germany and West Berlin were clearly linked to the United States and Western Europe for the remainder of the Cold War. The Holocaust. It was a genocide in which some 6 million European Jews were killed by Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany and the World War II collaborators with the Nazis. Throughout the spring and summer of 1940, the German army expanded Hitler's empire in Europe, conquering Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Between 1941 and 1944, Nazi German authorities deported millions of Jews from Germany, from occupied territories, and from the countries of many of its Axis allies to ghettos and killing centers, often called extermination camps, where they were murdered in specifically developed gassing facilities. German forces had been evacuating many of the death camps in the fall of 1944, sending inmates under guard to much further from the advancing enemy's front line. These so-called death marches continued all the way up to the German surrender, resulting in some deaths of 250,000 to 375,000 people. World War II officially ended in Europe on the next day, May 8th, after the German armed forces surrendered on the 7th to the Allies.